Welcome. In this video, I'm going to start showing you the accessibility features on an iPhone and iPad. This is going to be very similar, if not identical, on the two devices. We're going to go to settings and we'll scroll down until we see this accessibility person. You'll see that we have vision, physical and motor, hearing, and general. We're going to start with vision in this video and touch on the other ones in upcoming videos. This first one I want to talk about is VoiceOver. We're just going to go from the top to the bottom. VoiceOver has the most settings out of all of the vision apps, so I do recommend that you start here. It's going to take longer to get through all of these tools and options and settings, so make sure that you're saving enough time. Also, make sure that if you are going into one of these appointments, working with someone who is going to need vision assistance, that you've spent time beforehand testing these out on your own, so you know exactly how it sounds, you know exactly how these things look. So the first thing that's here is about voice over commands and how to use it. With any of these settings that I turn on for my clients, I print out a different sheet that is going to be their instructions so they can reference until they're in the habit of the gestures. Unfortunately, accessibility settings are pretty heavily gesture-based to turn on and off, which is a totally different conversation. So we can change the speaking rate. We can have it going really slow or we can have it going really fast. You're going to see speaking rate come up in different settings in different places, and each one is unique. So just to show you, I'm going to put speaking rate for VoiceOver all the way up. And when we see this speaking rate come up again for a different setting, it's going to be in a different place. Speech, you can go through and change the voice that is speaking to you. You can change the pitch. You can change how the pitch changes. You can add new language and detect new languages. If your client is someone who needs Braille, please take time to talk them through the options that are here. Verbosity, so again, that's punctuation, that's speech and sounds and notifications. You can do flashlight notifications, so the phone will flash, the flashlight will flash when something is going off instead of a sound, because if that's just helpful to some people with vision issues and some people with hearing issues. You can do capital letters, so if they speak the capital, deleting text, links, action, more content. So more content. Sometimes when you're reading articles, you're going through a web page, it'll say more content or read more, something like that. And so this is what they are. This is how that sound changes, the verbosity changes to let somebody know this isn't part of the usual text, this is something different that you can click. You can change table outputs, rotor actions, emojis, screen descriptions, media descriptions. You can turn all of that on and off. So please take good time here going through all of those. So that was verbosity. We're not even through the VoiceOver yet. There's audio, which actually would take you to change most of the settings, you would have to go to sound and haptics, so they give you that shortcut there. But if you needed to auto-select speaker in call or send to an HDMI, you can turn either of those on as well. Commands, you can change the touch gestures, right? This is kind of what's here by default, and then you can click and change some of them, which can start to get confusing to a lot of people. Let's say our client changes some of these settings and they lose their instructions or they lose their paper. It's going to be very difficult for us to help them through that because they made something that was custom to them. So if you are going to change any of these touch gestures, I recommend that you both record them in a place that is going to be accessible to you in the future. You can do some keyboard shortcuts. Again, not something that my clients like to do or get too far into, but if this is something that helps you or someone who is more of a digital native, has higher digital exposure and interest, all that stuff, maybe keyboard shortcuts would be something that they enjoy to get to their voiceover features faster. If you needed to change anything about your handwriting during the voice, we're still in voiceover here. There's lots of settings, and braille screen input. And then if you can reset this, so let's say they totally forget how to, like I mentioned with the touch gestures, you change some of those, you can reset voiceover commands in one go just by clicking that button. There's activities, rotors, rotor actions, typing, so how the voice changes when you are typing, and some quick settings for you as well. Navigation style, flat or grouped. I would recommend leaving it as flat. If you're not sure the difference, I would encourage you to get in there and try some of that. Navigate images. Always, people should know when there's an image on their screen. Unfortunately, there are lots of groups that don't include the alt text with that, and so sometimes there won't be anything to read. It'll just say image, and then it'll keep going, which is unfortunate. If we're putting an image there, it's to give a certain feeling, a vibe, to, pictures speak 1,000 words, so give a couple of words to this image so they can hear it. Often I change this for them to with descriptions, so they're not so discouraged that they're missing out on these different images. Oftentimes people with vision issues can see that there is an image, they just can't see what it is. And the clients that I've worked with anyways have felt discouraged by that. So we only get voiceover with images that have descriptions already. There's large cursor, which you can turn on or off, and then the caption panel, of course, and then the timeout. So in order to turn off voiceover, you have to do a double tap, and you can change how long that needs to be. That was voiceover. That was the first one, and honestly, it has the most settings. Everything else is going to go pretty quickly within Vision. Zoom is pretty straightforward, magnifying the entire screen. You can allow for focus. I'm a fan of the smart typing. Smart typing is when the zoom window stays zoomed in, but it doesn't zoom in on your keyboard. So if you have to start typing something, your keyboard is not zoomed in. It is exactly how you would expect it to be, which I'm a big fan of. Keyboard shortcuts, we looked at that in the other one. You can set keyboard shortcuts up for any of these accessibility tools. You can change some things about the Zoom controller. Really, this is some of those navigational pieces. Zoom region, whether it's going to be full screen zoom or window zoom. If you're not sure the difference, I would encourage you to try it. And your filter, whether it's going to be inverted grayscale, inverted, or low light. Whatever your client's going to need. And then the default zoom level. So when they tap in on something or they do the finger movement to do that zoom, it'll automatically zoom in to 5 times or 10 times, whatever you want this to be. Displaying text size is pretty straightforward. I'm a big fan of the bold text, especially when it comes to the descriptions that are usually in the gray space, such as what's underneath reduced transparency. Larger text you can turn on and off. By turning it off, you're just getting less options of the size you want your text to be. I like having it turned on. I get more options for the text size. That'll meet my clients' needs a lot better. I think it's kind of funny that they even have it off by default, but in any case, you can change button shapes. You can turn on and off labels on or off. So if you turn that off, you see how all the lines and circles disappeared on this page, whereas if I turn that back on, they're back. This is helpful for some of our older users who are used to seeing these images when they are using on and off buttons. So again, up to the user. I do encourage you to reduce transparency for those with vision and cognition issues. And then we get into the contrast for your display. So increasing the contrast, differentiate without color, invert grayscale. I'm sorry, just smart invert, and then the classic invert. Smart invert is a little bit, dare I say, smarter than the classic invert because it can know when you're in an app and adjust accordingly. This is especially helpful for my client who I gave the Wordle example. He tried to turn on a bunch of these features himself, and everything looked good when he was in settings, and then he went to go play his Wordle game, and all of the colors were messed up. He could not actually play his game. So Smart Invert is going to do better with that. It still didn't cut it for us. We ended up using color filters to help him. You can reduce the white point, which is really a combination of reducing blue light and reducing brightness. So I'm not a particular fan of this one. I'd rather just change my blue light or just change my auto brightness myself and not have this funky combination. But you or your client may find that different. Moving right along, we have motion, much more simple. You can reduce motion, which are those animations. You can autoplay message effects, or you could autoplay video previews. I'm not a fan personally of video previews, especially if they're going to come with sound. That just gets really confusing and overwhelming very quickly. So it's not something that I use on any of my devices. The autoplay message effects allow full screen effects in the Messages app to autoplay. That would be things like GIFs. So I do leave that on personally. Spoken content. So you remember, we're going to jump down to the bottom here. I said that with VoiceOver, it has its own set of settings. And here in spoken content, sure enough, the speaking rate is different. In VoiceOver, we made the speaking rate all the way up to the bunny, and this one, it's still in the middle. So for the different accessibility features, they do allow you to change individual features based on what your needs are going to be. This is different than interacting with, say, speech in the general settings. If you were to change the voice and the speed and all of that, that would be something that would happen over the entire phone, whereas these settings are specific to the accessibility tool that you will be using. So there is speech selection, speak your screen, typing feedback, which there are more settings to make sure you're turning, and voices, changing those voices, speech rate, and then pronunciations. If there's anything like my business name is Cover, but it looks like Covier, I could set that pronunciation in my phone for us. So when the reader is talking, they say my organization's name correctly. And the last one for this video is audio descriptions. When available, automatically play audio descriptions. I highly recommend that you turn this on for anyone with vision issues. I would not turn this on for someone with cognition issues. It can get confusing to have your phone talk to you when it wasn't even something you were paying close attention to. But it can be helpful for people with vision impairment. All right, in the next video, we're going to look at physical and motor.